A factory floor in the Netherlands. It looks like something out of a science fiction film. Clean rooms the size of football fields. Workers in full bodysuits. Machines the size of small houses that took decades and billions of dollars to build, doing something no other machine on Earth can do. Printing circuits onto silicon at a scale smaller than a virus. This is ASML, the Dutch company that manufactures extreme ultraviolet lithography machines. The only machines in the world capable of making the most advanced semiconductor chips. ASML makes roughly 50 of these machines per year. Every cutting-edge chip in your phone, your laptop, every AI data center in the world, it ran through a machine made in Veldhoven, the Netherlands. There is exactly one company in the world that can build them. China has been trying to get its hands on these machines for over a decade. Washington has been preventing that transfer for nearly as long. And in December 2025, the United States formalized what had been a loose network of export controls and bilateral agreements into something far more deliberate, far more ambitious, and far more consequential. They named it Pax Silica. On April 17, 2026, the Philippines just signed on. Welcome to the Indo-Pacific Report. What you're about to hear is not just a trade story. This is the architecture of the next world order. And Luzon just became its first construction site. To understand what happened in Manila, you need to go back about 35 years. Around 1990, Deng Xiaoping, the architect of China's modern economy, reportedly made an observation that the Chinese state has quietly built its entire resource strategy around ever since. The quote, often attributed to him, goes something like this: "The Middle East has oil. China has rare earths." He was right. China today controls approximately 60% of the world's rare earth production, and over 85% of its processing capacity. These are the elements, neodymium, terbium, dysprosium, that go into electric motors, wind turbines, military guidance systems, and semiconductor manufacturing equipment. You cannot build a chip fab without them. You cannot build an advanced military without them. For 30 years, the global technology industry looked at this concentration and shrugged. Efficiency was the principle. China was cheap, fast, and integrated. Why duplicate what already existed? Then COVID happened. Semiconductor shortages shut down car factories in Michigan and electronics assembly in Taiwan. Supply chains that had been optimized for calm weather shattered in the first real storm. And Washington finally started asking, what happens if this disruption is not an accident, but a choice? Jacob Hellberg, the U.S. Undersecretary of State for Economic Affairs and the chief architect of Pax Silica, put it plainly: if the 20th century ran on oil and steel, the 21st century runs on compute and the minerals that feed it. Whoever controls the semiconductor supply chain, the minerals, the manufacturing equipment, the chip design, the fabrication, the packaging, controls the foundational infrastructure of artificial intelligence. And whoever controls AI controls the economy, the military, and the political leverage of the next 50 years. This is the world Pax Silica was built to shape. This is the question worth sitting with. Why the Philippines? The standard answer is geography. Luzon sits at the northern end of the Philippine archipelago, directly astride the shipping lanes connecting Northeast Asian manufacturing hubs, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, with the Indian Ocean and the global market. It is geographically central to the Indo-Pacific in a way that very few locations are. But geography alone doesn't explain this. The more precise answer is that the Philippines has a long, underappreciated history in the global electronics supply chain. The country is already a significant producer of semiconductors and electronics. Manila and its surrounding regions have hosted electronics assembly and packaging operations for decades. The workforce is young. The Philippines has one of the youngest median ages in Southeast Asia, technically capable and English-speaking. Labor costs remain competitive relative to East Asian manufacturing centers. The State Department's announcement was explicit about this. It described the Philippines as a nation that brings to Pax Silica key capabilities and human talent in technology manufacturing, including semiconductors and electronics. There is also the geopolitical dimension, and it cannot be understated. The Philippines is a treaty ally of the United States under the Mutual Defense Treaty. The Luzon Economic Corridor already exists as a trilateral U.S.-Japan-Philippines infrastructure investment framework. Both Washington and Tokyo have been systematically building out this corridor for precisely the reason that it provides economic and strategic depth inside the first island chain, close enough to the South China Sea to matter, allied enough to be trusted. Let's talk about what a 4,000-acre industrial zone actually means, because the numbers are easy to say and hard to visualize. 4,000 acres is roughly 1,620 hectares, larger than many mid-sized cities. The announcement describes it as an economic security zone, a new designation that doesn't yet exist in Philippine law but is being created specifically for this purpose. The phrase AI native in the official description is significant. This is not a repurposed 1990s export processing zone being dressed up with new language. The intent is to design this facility from the ground up around the infrastructure demands of the AI era: power generation, data center capacity, cooling, precision manufacturing, and logistics. The site is intended to serve as a staging point for a purpose-built platform for allied manufacturing, an investment acceleration hub where the specific industrial activities are shaped by market demand, host-country comparative advantages, and the evolving needs of the Pax Silica network. More importantly, the State Department described the Luzon hub as explicitly the rest of many. This interconnection can transform Pax Silica industrial policy from a collection of bilateral projects into a genuine system capable of competing with and ultimately displacing the concentrated supply chains on which the world currently depends. That last phrase is the most important one. This is not a hedge against Chinese supply chain dominance. It is an attempt to replace it. The Atlantic Council, in analysis published just 2 days ago, noted that for Pax Silica to succeed, it will need more than hubs. It will need skilled worker mobility agreements, mutual recognition of technical credentials, and jointly funded workforce training programs. The hardware is necessary, but so is the human capital to run it. The Philippines, with its 115 million people and expanding technical education sector, is being positioned to supply a significant share of that capital. Now let's hear what the other side is saying. Because China is paying attention. Chinese analysts, including those writing for the Global Times, have been notably blunt in their assessment of Pax Silica. One industry expert summarized the critique this way: the move is essentially aimed at decoupling from China in the global semiconductor supply chain, and it is unlikely to succeed due to China's deep level of integration. The deeper concern, expressed by multiple analysts, is that fragmenting the semiconductor supply chain will raise costs, reduce economies of scale, and create economic friction that ultimately harms everyone, including Pax Silica members. Deng Xiaoping's rare earth leverage was built over 3 decades of patient accumulation. The United States is now attempting to build a counter-architecture in a fraction of that time. Whether they can move fast enough is the central question. Here is the larger frame. What we are living through right now is the end of a 30-year era. The era that began when the Berlin Wall fell, when the assumption was that economic integration would soften geopolitical competition, that trade would replace conflict, that interdependence was strength. That assumption is dead. The CHIPS Act killed it. Pax Silica buried it. The Luzon Economic Security Zone is building on top of it. What is replacing it is something we don't have a fully clean name for yet. Call it Allied Industrial Statecraft. The deliberate coordination of manufacturing capacity, supply chain geography, and investment oes among a coalition of countries that have decided, collectively, that economic security and national security are the same thing. And the Philippines is now formally part of this new architecture, not as a passive recipient of American military hardware, but as a co-constructor of the economic order that will determine who wins the AI century. The question for you is this: can a coalition of 13 nations coordinating across manufacturing, minerals, compute, and logistics actually build something fast enough and resilient enough to challenge an integrated supply chain that China has spent 40 years constructing? Or is this another well-designed alliance that moves too slowly against a competitor that moves without deliberation? Drop your answer in the comments. If you want to be the person in the room who actually understands what is happening in the Indo-Pacific, subscribe to this channel. We cover the moves the headlines miss. See you in the next one.
Bakit bigla naging usapin itong panukala na magtayo ang US ng isang pabrika ng mga armas at pampasabog sa Subic Bay? Base po yan sa rekomendasyon ng U.S. Congressional Appropriations Committee na mas maging magtayo ang US ng isang forward ammunition manufacturing site sa Subic Bay.
U.S. governments cater to commonality of production of munitions, which is at a worldwide shortage at this time.
Is the Philippines about to become America's new weapons factory in Asia? In a move that's making waves across the Indo-Pacific, the U.S. and the Philippines have officially sealed the deal to build a joint ammunition production and storage facility in Subic Bay, a place already steeped in military history. But this isn't a throwback to the Cold War. This is a next-gen military strategy unfolding in real time. As regional tensions rise, this facility is being seen as a game changer for defense, and the timing couldn't be more calculated.
Remain inside of that target area. These areas to include Area Charlie, which is short of the target area. Our mission. Our mission.
Number 2, 1 round.
Number two, one round.
Why Subic Bay? Because where you build power matters. Subic isn't just a dot on the map. It's the perfect strategic launch pad sitting near the South China Sea, close to Taiwan, and deep within the Indo-Pacific flashpoint zone. That means faster deployment, quicker supply chains, and tighter security coordination between Philippines and U.S. forces. And here's the kicker. The facility is expected to churn out over 7 million rounds of ammunition per year by 2026, all to NATO and U.S. military standards. This isn't just about production, it's about positioning. What's in it for the Philippines? A lot more than bullets. This deal brings tech transfer, skilled jobs, and a seat at the high-stakes defense table. We're not just storing ammo, we're building national strength, said one Filipino official. For decades, Philippines has been seen as a secondary player in regional defense talks. But now, it's stepping into a leadership role, co-producing the very tools of deterrence that will shape the balance of power in the years to come. The country is no longer a bystander. It's a builder of defense credibility. Could this be Washington's smartest Indo-Pacific move yet? With China expanding its naval footprint and pushing boundaries in the West Philippine Sea, the U.S. is responding without firing a shot. Pre-positioning ammunition in Subic cuts down military response time from weeks to days, giving U.S. forces a major logistical advantage. It's like having the keys to the ignition before the race starts. A senior defense analyst even called it the Pentagon's stealthiest but smartest move of 2025. It's quiet now, but it won't stay quiet for long. The numbers tell a powerful story. Philippines, U.S. joint military exercises are up over 30% this year, and over $100 million has already been invested in defense infrastructure upgrades under EDCA. The ammo facility folds directly into this bigger strategy. It's not a standalone deal, it's part of a military ecosystem that gives the U.S. flexibility and gives the Philippines long-term leverage. This is not just about what happens during war. It's about shaping the region to prevent one. Is the Philippines the next major defense manufacturing hub in Asia? That's what insiders are whispering, and with good reason. Talks are already in motion about expanding this cooperation to drones, surveillance systems, and cyber defense operations. The Philippines is no longer just hosting bases, it's creating capability, piece by piece. The geopolitical value of Subic is rising, and so is the country's global defense relevance. This is also a win for ordinary Filipinos. People in Zambales province, where the facility will be located, are already expecting an economic revival. New jobs, new training centers, and support industries are lining up. One local said, "This isn't just about defense, it's about opportunity." In a time when many countries are choosing sides in silence, the Philippines is choosing strategy and getting rewarded. What happens next? That's the part no one wants to miss. As the region braces for more uncertainty, from Taiwan tensions to maritime aggression, the Philippines' U.S. alliance is no longer just symbolic. It's operational, it's productive. And with this ammo facility, it's locked and loaded for whatever comes next. The world should take note, Subic Bay is back on the map, and this time, it's not just a base, it's a message. Why is Subic Bay suddenly back in the global defense spotlight? The answer lies in its unmatched strategic location. Once a sprawling U.S. naval base, Subic is now set to become the core of a PH-US ammunition production facility, located just off the highly contested South China Sea. This isn't just about land, it's about leverage. Subic gives both countries a forward-deployed position with a fast response radius over key flashpoints like Taiwan, the West Philippine Sea, and even the broader Indo-Pacific. We're not just responding to threats, we're rebuilding forward power. From the U.S. perspective, this facility answers a long-standing gap, the lack of a forward-stage ammunition production hub in the Indo-Pacific. It's a strategic necessity that's been in the pipeline for months, but now it's official. For the Philippines, it's even deeper. This aligns directly with its self-reliant defense posture, SRDP program, a national initiative to become less dependent on foreign military supply chains. President Marcos Jr. hit the point home on July 23, 2025. Even if we did not get help, we'd be doing this anyway. That's not dependence, that's determination. Where's the money coming from? Follow the investment trail. This isn't some token aid package, it's a foreign direct investment FDI-driven project, with funding backed by U.S. congressional allocations. The model is commercially structured, meaning it won't just create weapons, it'll generate revenue and trade flows. According to Philippine Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro Jr., this facility will regenerate revenue on a commercial basis for Subic, and even boost logistics for port development. The starting line? Around 200 to 300 highly skilled jobs with room to scale into entire downstream industries.
I believe the original concept, although it is funded by the U.S. Congress, it will be FDI, so it's a foreign direct investment concept. We can envision a private entity going about it on a commercial basis so that they can hire people on a commercial basis. Depending on the scale, initially about 200 to 300 people, highly technical people. But then there are downstream industries. Of course, they will have to build access to port facilities. It will regenerate revenue on a commercial basis for Subic. It will increase our trade flows.
What's actually being made here? Not just bullets, battlefield chemistry. The facility is expected to produce various ammunition calibers, along with critical explosive chemical precursors like nitrocellulose and nitroglycerin. These aren't just military-grade supplies, they're the backbone of self-sustaining defense logistics, which are exactly what countries need if they ever get cut off during conflict. The U.S. isn't just helping its ally, it's helping itself build faster access to munitions when time matters most. Here's the timeline bombshell. This was decided months ago, quietly. While the official deal was just finalized, both countries had been laying the groundwork behind the scenes. President Marcos confirmed the U.S. Congress had already signed off on the production plan long before it went public. It was only a matter of when, not if. And now that it's public, the strategic picture becomes clear. This isn't a reaction. It's a preemptive realignment of defense priorities. Still wondering how serious this is? Listen to the leaders. On July 22nd, 2025, U.S. President Donald Trump declared, "We're going to end up in a few months with more ammunition than any country has ever had." He wasn't bluffing, he was pointing to this very deal. And just a day later, President Marcos said, "The Americans are helping us with our SRDP. Even if we did not get help, we'd be doing this anyway."
We didn't do any work on that. That had been decided a long time ago. Not naman a year ago, but almost a year ago. We decided to, we already had decided. And like I answered when we were in the Oval Office, kasama ito, tinutulungan tayo ng mga Amerikano sa SRDP natin, as our Self-Reliance Defense Program. That's really something that we were going to do anyway. Kahit wala tayong katulong, gagawin talaga natin yun. They've offered to help, so.
Meanwhile, Defense Secretary Teodoro made the stakes clear back in March. We are facing a common threat, which now is the overreach of the Communist Party of China. These aren't just statements, they're signals. Subic Bay isn't just getting a military revival, it's becoming a central node in a 21st century security industrial network. The U.S. gets forward capability. The Philippines gets independence and industry. And together, they're sending a very loud, very clear message to the region. We're building now, because tomorrow may not wait. How did a former colony become one of America's closest military partners in Asia? To understand today's Philippines, United States ammo deal, we need to rewind the clock. The Philippines was a U.S. territory from 1898 to 1946, part of America's early Pacific Empire after the Spanish-American War. But this colonial past evolved into a deep military bond after independence was granted on July 4th, 1946. A symbolic date tying both nations together in freedom and soon after in defense. The alliance wasn't built overnight, it was linked into history. In 1951, the Philippines and the United States signed the Mutual Defense Treaty, MDT, committing both countries to mutual defense in case of external attack. That same strategic trust led to the Military Bases Agreement, 1947 to 1991, granting the U.S. access to key Philippine military installations like Subic Bay and Clark Air Base, massive Cold War assets that anchored America's Pacific dominance for decades. The bases are gone, but the strategic logic never disappeared. But what happened after the bases closed? The alliance adapted. In 1998, the Visiting Forces Agreement, VFA, revived military cooperation, allowing rotational U.S. presence and joint exercises on Philippine soil. Then came the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement in 2014, which opened up access to more Philippines military sites. Got a major upgrade in 2023, expanding access to 9 strategic bases across Luzon, Palawan, and Cagayan, a clear pivot toward frontline readiness. By mid-2024, the U.S. had committed $210 million toward EDCA base upgrades, fueling everything from hangars to humanitarian aid infrastructure. Why the sudden acceleration under President Marcos Jr.? The stakes have changed. After years of strained ties under President Duterte, Marcos Jr. has firmly reaffirmed the Philippines' U.S. alliance, especially as China's actions grow more aggressive. His administration has opened doors, signed deals, and fast-tracked security cooperation. Since fiscal year 2015, the U.S. has delivered over $463 million in military aid to the Philippines, and in August 2024, Washington announced another $500 million, targeting maritime domain awareness, drone capabilities, and coastal defense. Enter Balikatan, the symbol of rising readiness. Once modest in scope, the Balikatan, shoulder to shoulder, joint exercises have exploded in scale. In 2025, they involved over 18,000 troops, coast-to-coast amphibious drills, live fire training, and coordinated command missions. This isn't just practice, it's preparation for real scenarios in the Indo-Pacific, with a focus on territorial defense and interoperability. The message is clear. The alliance is not just ceremonial, it's combat ready. Meanwhile, the Philippines is not waiting on anyone. It's building itself up fast. Through the Self-Reliant Defense Posture, SRDP, The country is revitalizing its local defense industry, aiming to reduce dependence on foreign suppliers and develop its own advanced systems. The SRDP Revitalization Act, signed in November 2024, accelerated procurement of cutting-edge weaponry, with priority on missile systems, surveillance tech, and indigenous manufacturing. Money talks and defense is now a budget priority. The Philippines approved a record-breaking 271.9 billion pesos, $4.65 billion, defense budget for 2025, and that's just the beginning. The ambitious Re-Horizon 3 Modernization Initiative plans to pump 2 trillion pesos, $35 billion into the armed forces of the Philippines over the next decade. The goal? Transform the AFP into a credible regional force that can defend territory, secure maritime claims, and stand shoulder to shoulder with allies, not just in policy, but in firepower. The Philippines-U.S. alliance isn't just surviving, it's evolving into a high-stakes, high-tech partnership built on history, hardened by strategy, and forged for the future of regional stability. From colonial roots to cutting-edge coordination, the two nations are not just partners, they're co-architects of Indo-Pacific security. Is this new Philippines-United States ammo facility a shield or a sword aimed at Beijing? To China, the answer is obvious. With Subic Bay just 1,000 kilometers away, this new facility isn't just a supply hub. It's an offensive capability in striking distance. Beijing views this as part of a broader encirclement strategy by the United States, heightening its long-held narrative of containment. And while Washington frames it as defensive, Chinese officials warn this move will only amplify regional instability, not reduce it. In security terms, we've entered what experts call a heightened dilemma, where actions meant to deter conflict may actually provoke one. Could the South China Sea become the flashpoint where this all collides? That's the concern. This deal directly intersects with the Philippines' maritime tensions with China, particularly in the West Philippine Sea, where Filipino fishermen and naval patrols frequently face Chinese harassment. For Manila, this facility is a step toward deterrence and defense of sovereign waters. For China, it's a red line. Beijing has already slammed the expanded EDCA base access and expressed fierce opposition to potential deployment of U.S. Typhoon missile systems, a mobile, long-range precision strike platform that could threaten key Chinese assets. The more this builds up, the smaller the room for error becomes. But what if the biggest threat isn't military, it's political and economic? Inside the Philippines, not everyone is on board. Critics argue this deal is a step backward in sovereignty, turning the country into a manufacturing node for the U.S. military-industrial complex and a potential target in a future U.S.-China war. They cite 1991, when the Philippines proudly dismantled U.S. military bases as a declaration of independence. Now, some fear history is reversing, not through treaties, but through deepening entanglement and foreign dependency. The fear isn't just missiles, it's markets. China is the Philippines' largest trading partner, and history offers a warning. After South Korea installed the THAAD missile system in 2016, it faced a wave of Chinese economic retaliation, from banned tours to shuttered businesses and blocked exports. Now, Filipino officials worry the same could happen here. Tourism could drop, projects could stall, and Chinese investment could quietly vanish. It's a geopolitical gamble that may come with an economic price tag. And then there's the bigger regional question. Are we witnessing the unraveling of ASEAN neutrality? As the U.S. boosts security initiatives like the Pacific Deterrence Initiative, PDI, with a whopping $9.9 billion requested for fiscal year 2025, some analysts warn of growing bloc polarization in Southeast Asia. The Philippines is aligning more visibly with Washington, while others try to stay neutral or balance both sides. If too many countries are forced to choose, it could fracture ASEAN unity and leave the region more divided and more volatile. What the U.S. sees as alliance building, China sees as encroachment. What the Philippines sees as defense cooperation, critics see as sovereignty erosion. And what started as an ammo deal could now be a flashpoint for a much bigger power struggle, not just between nations, but over the very future of Asia's balance of power. Is this the beginning of a stronger alliance or the start of a new regional arms race? One thing is certain. The PH U.S. ammunition production deal is a strategic inflection point in the Indo-Pacific. More than just an infrastructure project, it's a signal to the world that the Philippines and the United States are not just allies on paper, but active partners in shaping the future of regional security. In an era defined by power projection and maritime pressure, this deal marks a bold shift toward collective preparedness. But with every move forward, the risks move closer. While the agreement gives the Philippines a much-needed boost for defense and reestablishes America's logistical edge in Asia, it also raises the stakes. China's disapproval isn't just diplomatic. It could escalate into economic pushback, strategic countermeasures, or greater tension in already contested waters. The path between deterrence and provocation is razor thin, and both countries will need steady hands on the wheel. So what's next? That's where diplomacy meets defense. The long-term success of this project won't just depend on how many rounds it produces, but on how well both nations manage the messaging, the pressure, and the power dynamics it brings. Navigating this new chapter will require constant dialogue, regional cooperation, and an unwavering commitment to international law. If done right, this facility could become a blueprint for balance, one that strengthens security while avoiding escalation. The ammo may be stored in Subic, but the real power lies in how it's used, why it's there, and whether it brings peace through strength or tension through miscalculation. Thank you for tuning into our channel. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analysis of global issues.
What allowed the Indonesian economy to grow more than 5% in first semester?
While regional economies slow, the Philippines stands out, defying the trend and remaining one of Southeast Asia's growth leaders. The World Bank projects the Philippines to be the second fastest growing economy in the region this year.
Something interesting is happening in Southeast Asia right now. You might not notice it at first. It doesn't always show up as a big headline or breaking news alert. But if you follow the economy, politics, or even the shifting alliances in Asia, you start seeing a pattern. Two countries keep appearing in the conversation: the Philippines and Indonesia. Different histories, different strengths, different personalities as nations. But somehow, they're now moving toward the same question: who will lead Southeast Asia in the future? Just recently, economists discussing the future of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations said something that caught a lot of attention. Southeast Asia could become one of the most powerful economic regions in the world within the next 2 decades. Think about that for a second. A region of more than 680 million people, young populations, massive trade routes, some of the busiest shipping lanes on Earth. In other words, this part of the world is no longer just developing, it's becoming a center of gravity. And when a region rises like that, one thing always happens. Countries start competing for leadership. For a long time, most people assumed that role belonged to Indonesia. It's easy to see why. Indonesia is huge. The population alone is massive. The country sits on enormous reserves of coal, nickel, palm oil, and other resources that the world desperately needs. Walk through Jakarta, and the scale hits you immediately. Endless traffic, skyscrapers under construction, ports shipping out resources day and night. It feels like a country that's constantly moving. For decades, analysts looked at Indonesia and said, yeah, that's the giant of Southeast Asia. Over the last few years, something else has been quietly building momentum: the Philippines. And honestly, the speed of its rise has surprised a lot of people. Cities like Manila and Cebu City are buzzing with call centers, tech startups, outsourcing companies, and young professionals working with clients from New York to London. You walk through those business districts and it almost feels like a global hub. English everywhere, laptops open in cafes, young workers plugged into the digital economy. It's a very different kind of power. Not factories, not mines, but people. And that's where the real story begins. Because the Philippines and Indonesia aren't just competing in size. They're competing with two completely different economic models. Indonesia built its strength on resources, industry, and manufacturing. The Philippines built its growth around services, talent, and global connectivity. Both models are working. Both economies are growing. And now, slowly but surely, the gap between them is becoming a lot more interesting than people expected. But here's the thing many people outside the region don't always realize. This isn't just an economic race. It's also about influence, leadership inside the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, security partnerships with powers like the United States, regional tensions in places like the South China Sea, trade routes, military cooperation, political weight. All of these things shape who really leads Southeast Asia in the long run. And if you asked experts 10 years ago who would dominate the region, the answer would have come instantly. Indonesia, no debate. But today, the conversation feels different. The Philippines is growing faster than many expected. Its young population is entering the workforce. Its economy keeps surprising analysts year after year. And suddenly the question isn't so obvious anymore. So now the real question hanging over Southeast Asia is this. In the decades ahead, when this region becomes one of the most powerful economic zones on Earth, will it be Indonesia that leads the way? Or the Philippines? Because the race has already started. And honestly, it's getting a lot more interesting than anyone surprises people the first time they really look at it. On the map, it almost looks fragile. A scattered chain of islands floating between the South China Sea and the vast Pacific Ocean. More than 7,600 islands, stretched across some of the most strategic waters in the world. At first glance, it feels like geography that would make a country difficult to manage. But strangely, that same geography has always been part of its strength. Ships pass nearby every day carrying energy, electronics, and trade between Asia and the rest of the world. Militaries monitor these waters carefully. Diplomats talk about them constantly. In a region where sea lanes are everything, the Philippines sits right in the middle of the action. And then, there's the people. The country now has around 115 million citizens. And what really stands out isn't just the number, it's the age. The median age is only about 25 years old. Walk through the streets of Manila or even smaller cities, and you immediately notice the energy. Students rushing between universities, young workers filling office towers, cafes full of people with laptops open late into the evening. Demographers have a name for this kind of advantage. They call it a demographic dividend. Basically, when a country has a large young population entering the workforce at the same time, the economy can expand very quickly. And in the Philippines, nearly 2/3 of the population is under 35. That's a massive wave of workers, entrepreneurs, and consumers all arriving at once. It's like the country is constantly renewing its own standout in Southeast Asia is how its economy works. Most countries in the region built their rise on factories and heavy industry. Places like Vietnam or Thailand became manufacturing hubs first. The Philippines took a different route. Instead of becoming the factory floor of Asia, it quietly became something else. The service center of the global economy. The best example of this is the business process outsourcing industry, usually just called BPO. Over the past 2 decades, companies from the United States, Europe, and Australia started moving customer service, technical support, accounting, and even legal work overseas. And somehow, the Philippines ended up becoming the perfect place for it. Today, the industry employs more than 1.7 million Filipinos and generates roughly $35 billion every year. Cities like Manila, Cebu City, and Davao City are filled with glass office towers where thousands of people work night shifts, answering calls from customers thousands of miles away. If you walk through these business districts at midnight, the lights are still on. The world is sleeping somewhere else, but the Philippines is working. That's why someone in the industry once said something that stuck. The Philippines became the back office of the global economy. And honestly, it's hard to argue with that. Another huge pillar of the economy is electronics manufacturing. About 55 to 60% of the country's exports come from electronics and semiconductors. That means parts built in Philippine factories often end up inside the phones, computers, and devices people use every day. Some of the biggest technology companies in the world operate facilities there. Firms like Texas Instruments, Samsung Electronics, Intel, and ON Semiconductor. It's not always visible to the outside world, but the Philippines has quietly inserted itself into global technology supply chains. So while the country may not dominate headlines about chip manufacturing, it still plays an important role behind the scenes. Then there's another economic force that people sometimes underestimate: overseas Filipino workers. More than 10 million Filipinos live and work abroad, in the Middle East, North America, Europe, and across Asia. Nurses, engineers, construction workers, seafarers, teachers. You'll find them everywhere. And every year, they send money home. A lot of money. Remittances flowing back into the Philippines now exceed $36 to $38 billion annually. That money supports families, pays for education, builds homes, and fuels everyday spending across the country. Economists sometimes describe remittances as a kind of economic stabilizer. Even when global markets become uncertain, that steady flow of income helps keep domestic consumption strong. It's almost like the Filipino economy has millions of ambassadors working abroad together, all connected, and you start to see why the Philippines has been growing so quickly. Over the past decade, the economy has expanded at an average rate of around 5 to 6% per year, making it one of the faster-growing economies in Asia. The momentum comes from several directions at once: a young workforce, strong domestic spending, expanding services, and global connections through both technology and labor migration. It's not a perfect system, no country is, but there's a sense of forward motion, the kind where every year the country feels just a little more confident about its future. And beyond economics, the Philippines also holds a very important position on the geopolitical chessboard. Its location places it close to some of the most sensitive strategic areas in Asia, including the waters near Taiwan and the contested zones of the South China Sea. Because of that, it has long maintained a defense partnership with the United States. In recent years, that relationship has grown even closer through agreements like the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, which allows American forces to access several military sites across the country. For Washington, the Philippines is a key strategic partner. For Manila, the alliance provides security support in an increasingly tense region. And in the broader competition between the United States and China, the Philippines has become something of a frontline state. Which means its rise isn't just an economic story. It's also a geopolitical one. And that's exactly why the country is drawing more attention now than it did just fast-moving. Indonesia feels massive. Not just big on a map, massive in scale, population, resources, everything. With around 280 million people, Indonesia is the fourth most populous country in the world. That alone changes the way its economy behaves. When you have that many people, your domestic market becomes a powerhouse by itself. Businesses don't just build for export, they build for the millions of customers right at home. And like the Philippines, Indonesia is also an island nation. But the scale is on another level. More than 17,000 islands stretch across the equator, forming a vast archipelago that connects the Indian Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. For centuries, ships carrying spices, silk, and later oil and electronics have passed through these waters. One of the most important routes in the world, the Strait of Malacca, runs right alongside Indonesia. Every day, thousands of vessels pass through this narrow corridor linking East Asia to Europe, the Middle East, and beyond. That means Indonesia doesn't just sit in Southeast Asia. In many ways, it controls one of the gateways of global part of the country has been Jakarta. But even that is about to change. Indonesia is currently building a completely new capital city called Nusantara, deep in the forests of Borneo. It's one of the most ambitious urban projects in the modern world, an attempt to create a greener, smarter administrative center while easing the immense pressure on Jakarta. Whether it fully succeeds is still an open question. But the very idea shows something important about Indonesia. It thinks on a grand scale. Economically, Indonesia operates on a very different model from the Philippines. Where the Philippines leans heavily on services, Indonesia's strength lies in resources, manufacturing, and its enormous domestic market. Today, the country's GDP sits around $1.7 trillion, making it the largest economy in Southeast Asia by a wide margin. Walk through industrial zones outside Jakarta or Surabaya, and you'll see factories, container yards, logistics hubs, the kind of infrastructure that powers a manufacturing economy. But beneath that industrial layer lies something even more valuable: natural resources. And Indonesia has exporters of palm oil, a product used in everything from cooking oil to cosmetics and packaged foods. It's also a major supplier of coal, natural gas, rubber, and other raw materials that fuel global industries. But in recent years, one resource has pushed Indonesia into the center of a completely new global race: nickel. Nickel is a crucial component in modern batteries, especially the ones used in electric vehicles. As the world begins shifting toward EVs, demand for battery minerals has exploded, and Indonesia happens to hold one of the largest nickel reserves on Earth. The government realized something important a few years ago. If Indonesia simply exported raw nickel, other countries would capture most of the profits by processing it into batteries and advanced materials. So President Joko Widodo pushed a bold policy. Indonesia banned the export of raw nickel, forcing companies to build smelters and processing facilities inside the country instead. His message was simple, but powerful. Indonesia must not only export raw materials, we must build the industries of the future. And that decision triggered a wave of investment. Now global manufacturers are pouring money into Indonesian industrial zones. Companies like Hyundai Motor Company are building electric vehicle factories. LG Energy Solution is investing heavily in battery production. And suppliers connected to Tesla are exploring partnerships to secure long-term access to battery. Indonesia is trying to move up the value chain, from raw resources to high-tech manufacturing. It's a huge transition. And if it works, the country could become a central hub in the global EV supply chain. At the same time, Indonesia has been pouring enormous amounts of money into infrastructure. For decades, poor logistics and underdeveloped transportation networks slowed economic growth across the archipelago. Moving goods between islands was often expensive and inefficient, so the government started building new ports, modern highways, expanded rail networks, and large energy projects began appearing across the country. Airports were upgraded, industrial parks expanded, logistics corridors improved. And of course, there's the massive Nusantara Capital Project, a symbol of Indonesia's long-term ambitions. These investments are gradually changing the investment environment. Companies that once hesitated to enter Indonesia are now finding it easier to operate, ship products, and connect supply chains. It's not a transformation that happens overnight, but step by step, Indonesia is reshaping itself into something bigger than just a resource exporter. It's trying to become an industrial and technological power in its own right. And that's exactly why its rivalry with the Philippines is becoming such a fascinating story. Indonesia side by side, the contrast becomes really interesting. On paper, Indonesia clearly looks like the heavyweight. Its economy is currently worth about $1.7 trillion, making it the largest in Southeast Asia. The Philippines, by comparison, sits closer to $680 billion. Population numbers tell a similar story. Indonesia has roughly 280 million people, while the Philippines has about 115 million. In simple terms, Indonesia's economy is more than twice the size. But numbers alone don't always tell the whole story. Economies aren't just about size, they're about how they grow, what they produce, and where their momentum is heading. And that's where the comparison starts advantages that economists often talk about with a lot of excitement. First is demographics. The population is significantly younger, which means millions of new workers are entering the labor force every year. In economic terms, that's powerful fuel for long-term growth. Second is the country's strong service sector. The Philippines has built a massive outsourcing industry that connects it directly to global companies, especially in places like the United States and Europe. And then there's language. English proficiency across the workforce makes it easier for international firms to operate there. Indonesia, however, holds its own set of powerful advantages. The domestic market alone is enormous. With hundreds of millions of consumers, businesses entering Indonesia gain access to one of the largest markets in the world. Add to that the country's huge reserves of natural resources and a steadily expanding industrial base, and you get a very different kind of growth engine. So in many ways, The competition between these two economies reflects two completely different. When you look at what each country exports. Indonesia's export economy is built largely on commodities and energy. Resources like palm oil, coal, nickel, and natural gas remain major drivers of trade. That means Indonesia tends to benefit when global commodity prices rise. The Philippines, on the other hand, exports something quite different. Electronics, semiconductors, and IT services dominate its export portfolio. Products and services linked to technology now account for a large share of the country's international trade. In other words, while Indonesia rides the cycles of global resource demand, the Philippines often benefits from growth in the technology sector and digital services. Two very different engines powering two rising more toward Indonesia. Two very different engines powering two rising more toward Indonesia. The reasons are fairly straightforward. The country offers a massive domestic market, access to key natural resources, and growing manufacturing capacity. For multinational companies looking to build factories or tap into Southeast Asia's consumer base, Indonesia often feels like the obvious choice. But the Philippines has been making quiet progress here as well. Over the past few years, the government has introduced reforms aimed at making it easier for foreign companies to invest. Restrictions on foreign ownership have been eased in certain sectors, and the country is actively trying to position itself as a more competitive investment destination. It's not catching up overnight, but the gap is economic confidence. But the gap is economic confidence. Indonesia has enjoyed a relatively stable democratic trajectory since the fall of the Suharto in 1998. Since then, transitions of power have generally been peaceful, and economic policies have remained fairly predictable. That consistency has helped reassure investors. The Philippines also operates as a democratic system, but its political landscape has historically been a bit more turbulent, with frequent shifts in policy direction depending on leadership. Even so, reforms in economic management in recent years have improved the business environment and strengthened investor confidence. In other words, both systems have their strengths, but stability has often worked slightly more in Indonesia might lead Southeast Asia in the coming decades. Southeast Asia in the coming decades, the answer isn't simple. Right now, Indonesia clearly holds the stronger position. It has the largest economy in the region, immense natural resource wealth, a growing manufacturing base, and massive infrastructure investments transforming the country. These factors give Indonesia real economic gravity within Southeast Asia. But the Philippines shouldn't be underestimated. Its workforce is younger. Its service sector is deeply integrated into the global economy. English proficiency gives it a natural advantage in industries tied to technology and international business. And its long-standing alliance with the United States also adds an important strategic dimension. In other words, the two countries represent two different models of power: Indonesia, resources, industry, and scale. The Philippines, talent, services, and global connectivity. Right now, Indonesia remains the dominant economic force in Southeast Asia. But the long-term race is far from decided. If the Philippines continues expanding its technology, outsourcing, and electronic sectors, it could easily become one of the fastest rising economies in Asia. And that leaves Southeast Asia with a fascinating question for the decades ahead. Will industrial power and natural resources ultimately dominate the region? Or will human capital and services reshape the economic hierarchy? The answer will likely shape the future of Southeast Asia. Share your perspective in the comments. Your insights help deepen the conversation and sharpen our understanding of evolving regional dynamics. Thank you, and we will see you soon in our next geopolitical discussion.
Army ammunition plant.
Army ammunition plant.
Army ammunition plant.
Army ammunition plant.
The Radford Army Ammunition Plant.
An ammunition factory.
In what could mark a seismic shift in U.S. force posture across the Indo-Pacific, American lawmakers are pushing for the construction of a major ammunition manufacturing and storage plant at the former U.S. naval base Subic Bay, a site once considered the crown jewel of Washington's military footprint in Southeast Asia. If the plan moves forward, it would be one of the most significant U.S. defense investments in the Philippines since the Cold War. And a clear signal that Washington is doubling down on hard power projection in the face of China's rising muscle flexing in the South China Sea and the Luzon Strait. A recent report from the House Appropriations Committee's Defense Subcommittee revealed the proposal under the title IndoPacific Ammunition Manufacturing, citing growing concern over the lack of forward-deployed munitions infrastructure in the region. Translation: in a fight that could erupt over Taiwan or in the first island chain, logistics and resupply will make or break victory, and the U.S. wants to be ready. The committee is concerned with the lack of a forward-staged ammunition manufacturing facility in the Indo-Pacific. The report reads, it directs the Department of Defense to explore the feasibility of building a joint U.S.-Philippine plant at Subic, coordinating with the State Department and the International Development Finance Corporation, DFC. The facility would reportedly produce and store key energetic materials like nitrocellulose, nitroglycerin, and acid, essential ingredients in modern ammunition. These aren't just bullets. We're talking about the full stack. Explosives, artillery shells, smart munitions, and likely preloaded all-up rounds, ready for deployment. Once the largest overseas U.S. naval base, Subic Bay was vacated in 1992 following nationalist pressure in Manila. But history doesn't stay buried for long, especially in geopolitics. In the shadow of rising Chinese aggression, Subic is quietly returning to the chessboard. Today, American warships and logistics vessels are already quietly serviced in local yards. And the U.S. Navy is planning a new prepositioning program in and around the bay. Basically, floating warehouses of war stuff, locked and loaded. This proposed ammo plant is the next logical step, especially after the Philippines passed its Self-Reliant Defense Posture Revitalization Act, aiming to build its own defense industrial base. Think, less dependency on imports, more made-in-Manila munitions. It's a commitment to a long-term growth trajectory, said President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., who's positioned the Philippines as a linchpin of deterrence in the Indo-Pacific. We are at the fulcrum of geopolitical shifts and volatilities. This isn't just a solo act. The U.S. and the Philippines have released a joint defense industrial cooperation roadmap with ammunition components and energetics listed as top-tier priorities. That means this proposed plant could be a joint venture, bringing investment, technology, and training into Philippine hands, and tying both militaries closer at the operational level. During Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth's recent trip to Manila, the two sides hammered out a vision statement, laying out areas like storage, logistics, and live fire readiness as the next frontier of cooperation. Here's what makes this move so geostrategically spicy. Subic Bay sits at the mouth of the Bashi Channel, a choke point between Taiwan and Luzon that is essential for maritime dominance and military logistics. China has been actively contesting waters, building A280 bubbles in the South China Sea. But with new U.S. bases in Luzon, F-22s rotating into the Philippines, and now a possible ammo plant just 300 miles from Taiwan, the U.S. is positioning itself to disrupt Beijing's game plan from multiple directions. This is what strategists call deterrence by denial, making it so hard and costly for China to achieve its objectives that it rethinks the calculus. Lawmakers have instructed the Secretary of Defense to deliver a feasibility update within 60 days of the Appropriations Act being signed into law. If greenlit, construction would mark a new era of defense industrial diplomacy between Washington and Manila, one anchored in co-production, co-location, and shared deterrence. But there's a wild card: Philippine domestic politics. While the Marcos administration is strongly pro-US, there are fears that a future Duterte-style pivot to China could throw a wrench in these plans. The 2028 Philippine presidential elections may become a battleground not just for votes, but for the very future of this alliance. Subic Bay is back in play, not as a relic of the Cold War, but as a potential linchpin in 21st century great power competition. If this ammo plant becomes a reality, it won't just stockpile bullets. It'll solidify the Philippines' role as America's frontline partner in the Indo-Pacific's most volatile neighborhood. One thing's clear, the arsenal of democracy may be getting a new zip code. And it's looking a lot like Luzon.
We are making good progress. The economy grow.
For millions of Filipino families, the dream has always been straightforward. Better jobs, stable incomes, food prices that don't outpace the paycheck, a future where children are no longer forced to board planes in search of opportunity their own country could not give them. That dream now rests on a single national milestone, becoming an upper middle income country.
Forward to the implementation of several bilateral agreements in culture, energy transition, legal cooperation, artificial intelligence, a digital economy, the improvement of government activities.
Under President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., this ambition has been pulled out of the background of policy debates and placed at the very heart of the country's economic strategy, a commitment to lift the nation into a higher income bracket before his term draws to a close. And for the first time in decades, that goal looks genuinely within reach. In Manila, government officials continue to project confidence, insisting that even as global instability deepens, the country can still hold its line toward upper middle income status. But just as the Philippines edges closer to this historic moment, the world itself is entering one of its most uncertain chapters in years. Wars are driving oil prices upward. Supply chains are tightening under mounting strain. And economic forecasts that once read with quiet confidence are beginning to shift beneath the surface. What once looked like a straight road forward now appears crowded with obstacles. So the question stands. Will the Philippines rise into the middle income ranks under Marcos? Or will the turbulence sweeping the global economy push the dream just beyond reach? Only a few months ago, the Philippines carried the look of a country on a steady economic climb. Growth was strong, consumer spending was rising, and across markets and ministries alike, there was a quiet confidence that the country could sustain the pace needed to carry it into middle-income territory. But lately, the forecasts have started to tell a more cautious story. According to the Asian Development Bank, the Philippine economy is now projected to expand by just 4.4% in 2026, a meaningful downgrade from the earlier outlook of 5.3%. And the caution doesn't end there. The International Monetary Fund goes a step further, suggesting growth could ease even more, settling closer to 4.1%. On paper, these shifts may appear modest, but in the language of economics, even a single percentage point carries heavy consequences. It can translate into thousands of jobs that never get created, wages that rise more slowly than the cost of living, and fewer openings for families still trying to work their way out of poverty. Yet beneath the slowing growth figures, another pressure is quietly taking shape. Inflation. Prices are expected to climb by around 4%, pushed upward in large part by rising global energy and commodity costs. And for ordinary households, the impact is far from abstract. Higher transport fares, more expensive food at the market, and savings that erode just a little more with every passing month. To be clear, the Philippine economy is still moving forward, but the momentum is no longer building. And when growth loses speed at precisely the wrong moment, national ambitions, however close they may appear, can quietly begin to slip out of reach. The greatest threats to the Philippine economy may not rise from within the country at all. They may be taking shape thousands of kilometers away. Across the Middle East, deepening conflict has thrown global energy markets into a state of unease, lifting oil prices upward and sending quiet shockwaves rippling through the wider global economy.
We are sure by yung Petron can supply the market up to June 30 minimum. Pero we keep buying crude oil. I'm assuring public na we will never run out of supply. Kaya huwag ko kayo magpanic. And I promise the public we will not take advantage on this fuel crisis.
And for the Philippines, this matters far more than many realize. The country depends heavily on imported fuel, which means that every upward jolt in oil prices travels swiftly through the bloodstream of its economy. Transport becomes more expensive. Food prices begin to climb. Factories face mounting production costs. And businesses, many already cautious, start to pull back on their spending, sensing the pressure building from every direction.
Sa lahat ng pagkakataon, sa lahat ng okasyon, ang Pilipinas ay laging sincere sa pakikipag-usap, pakikipagnegosasyon, lalong-lalo na sa pamumuno po ni Pangulong Marcos Jr. Wala po siyang secret deal.
The Marcos administration moved decisively, declaring a national energy emergency and rolling out fuel subsidies, tax suspensions, and targeted assistance designed to soften the blow on ordinary households. Yet even the most resolute domestic measures can only do so much, because no policy, however well crafted, can fully insulate a nation from the tremors of a global shock. Across Asia, the picture is turning more sober as well, with regional growth forecasts now expected to ease to around 5.1%. And this, in truth, is the reality of a deeply interconnected world. When energy markets tremble, economies far from the front lines feel the weight of it. And for countries like the Philippines, where imported fuel powers the rhythm of daily life, every distant crisis eventually arrives with a domestic price tag. For millions of Filipino families, the economy is not something measured in percentages or projected in forecasts. It is measured in remittances. Every year, millions of overseas Filipino workers leave home, rarely by choice, and almost always by necessity. They leave behind parents, children, husbands and wives, and in exchange for that painful distance, they send money back. Money that quietly keeps households running, keeps children in classrooms, and keeps food on the family table. In 2025 alone, Filipinos working abroad sent home more than $35 billion, a sum equal to roughly 7% of the country's entire economy. But behind that lifeline lies a quieter vulnerability. More than 17% of those remittances flow in from workers based in the Middle East, a region now sliding deeper into instability. And if conflict widens, if businesses shutter their doors, if workers see their contracts cut short, the fallout will not stop at distant borders. It will travel all the way home. Parents struggling to meet tuition deadlines. Families postponing medical care they can no longer delay. Households quietly trimming even the most basic needs from the monthly budget. For decades now, remittances have stood as one of the Philippines' most enduring economic lifelines. But in an era defined by global uncertainty, even the strongest lifelines can begin to fray. The Philippines is not running this race alone. Across Southeast Asia, several nations are pursuing the same horizon: stronger economies, sharper infrastructure, and rising standards of living. But some are pulling ahead. Take Vietnam. Over the past decade, Vietnam has quietly reinvented itself into one of Southeast Asia's fastest rising manufacturing powerhouses. Global corporations have poured billions into its factories, exports have surged at a remarkable pace, and industrial growth has climbed year after year. And for many international investors, Vietnam has become a destination of choice, offering speed, efficiency, and production costs that are hard to match. Then there is Indonesia. Backed by a massive population and an extraordinary wealth of natural resources, Indonesia has steadily expanded its infrastructure while fortifying its domestic industries. New highways, modern ports, and sprawling industrial zones have gradually reshaped the country's entire economic landscape. And unlike many smaller economies in the region, Indonesia carries an added advantage: a vast internal market that generates steady, self-sustaining demand. And finally, Malaysia. Already classified as an upper-middle-income country, Malaysia has spent decades carefully constructing a strong industrial base, modern infrastructure, and an increasingly advanced manufacturing sector. For the Philippines, these comparisons are not just academic. Because the race toward middle-income status is never won on domestic growth alone, it is won by keeping pace with the neighbors running beside you. And when other countries move faster, investment flows toward them, jobs follow them, and opportunities quietly drift in their direction. The Philippines, to its credit, is still very much in the race, but the distance between ambition and competition is becoming harder to overlook. Facing steady pressure from every direction, at home and abroad, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has placed economic transformation squarely at the heart of his administration. His strategy rests on a clear and deliberate belief that infrastructure, investment, and targeted reforms can carry the Philippines into the ranks of upper-middle-income economies. At the center of this plan lies a sweeping drive to modernize the country's infrastructure. New highways, deep water ports, rail networks, and agricultural supply corridors are being pushed to the top of the national agenda. Each designed to connect cities, accelerate trade, and steadily lower the cost of doing business across the archipelago. In parallel, the Marcos administration has moved to draw in foreign investors by cracking open key sectors to far greater participation. Industries such as telecommunications, shipping, railways, and renewable energy are now being repositioned as strategic gateways, channels for long-term capital and sustained economic expansion. But growth, on its own, is never enough. As global prices climb, the government has also widened its social protection programs, rolling out fuel subsidies and direct financial assistance aimed at cushioning ordinary citizens from the steady rise in the cost of living. Senior officials continue to project confidence, insisting that despite mounting global uncertainty, the Philippines can still cross into upper-middle-income status within Marcos's term. Yet history offers a sobering reminder. Ambitious plans rarely succeed on vision alone. They succeed on execution. And in an era marked by deepening global instability, execution becomes harder than it has ever been. Even as new roads rise from the ground and investments continue to flow in, another challenge is quietly taking shape beneath the surface. One that will shape the country's future just as powerfully. And it is a challenge that cannot be solved with concrete or steel. Human capital. Across the Philippines, the gaps in education remain a deepening concern. Many students continue to fall short of expected learning benchmarks, even as employers across industries keep raising the same complaint: a persistent shortage of skilled workers. At the same time, youth unemployment remains stubbornly elevated, leaving far too many young Filipinos stepping into adulthood without a clear or stable path forward. And this, in turn, creates a dangerous imbalance. Businesses need skilled workers, workers need stronger training. And when education and industry drift apart, productivity inevitably begins to stall. For President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., this may prove the most difficult challenge of all, because even the most ambitious infrastructure project cannot deliver lasting returns without a workforce prepared to sustain it. And history offers a sobering warning. Many nations have reached a point where growth quietly loses momentum, not because of a shortage of investment, but because their workforce was never equipped to move into higher value industries. Economists have a name for this moment: the middle income trap. A stage where countries find themselves stuck, unable to climb from basic growth into advanced economic development. And if the Philippines' education and skills gaps remain unresolved, the country risks constructing its infrastructure faster than it builds the capabilities to match. And in the end, that imbalance could quietly decide just how high the Philippines is able to rise. The Philippines stands at one of the most consequential turning points in its modern history. For decades, the country has pursued a single quiet ambition: to rise into the ranks of upper-middle income economies. It is a milestone that carries the promise of stronger industries, rising wages, and a steadier life for millions of families who have waited generations for it.
Pinakamabilis at direktang mararamdaman ng ordinaryong Pilipino, hindi bukas, hindi sa susunod na linggo.
Under President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., that goal has drifted closer than at any point before. Infrastructure is expanding, investment reforms are steadily taking shape, and senior officials continue to insist that middle income status can still be reached within this administration's term. But the road forward is no longer a clear one. Growth forecasts are softening. Distant conflicts are driving costs higher. Remittance flows are entering uncertain territory. Regional competitors are pressing ahead with growing speed. And deep structural weaknesses, particularly in education and workforce readiness, remain stubbornly unresolved. On their own, none of these pressures may be enough to halt the country's progress. But together, they are building tension at the very moment when momentum matters most. The Philippines is not falling behind, but it is no longer sailing through calm waters either. And as the country edges closer to one of the most defining economic milestones of its modern era, a single question now lingers over the horizon. Will the Philippines rise into the ranks of middle-income nations under Marcos? Or will global instability hold the dream just out of reach, even as it draws near enough to touch? The answer may shape far more than the legacy of a single presidency. It may shape the future of an entire generation. If this story gave you a clearer picture of where the Philippines truly stands and the forces quietly shaping its future, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next stories redefining our world. Share your thoughts in the comments, because every perspective matters, especially in moments like this one. Start with the map. Everything else flows from it. In Malaysia's Sabah state, fishermen can legally buy subsidized diesel for 2.10 ringgit per liter, about 53 US cents. Now cross the Sulu Sea. In the southern Philippines, the same fuel sells for roughly 50 pesos per liter, or 85 US cents. That is a 32-cent gap on every liter. On land, this difference barely registers. At sea, it matters. A lot. Fuel moves in bulk. Demand never stops. Oversight thins out quickly once you leave the shoreline. In that environment, even a modest margin becomes profitable. This is not theft born of desperation. It is arbitrage created by policy. Fuel gains value simply by crossing water. There is no refining, no transformation, just distance, borders, and mismatched prices. And fuel has 3 advantages that make it ideal for this kind of economy. It stores easily. It is difficult to trace. And it is essential to everyday life. Small margins, repeated often enough, scale fast. This is the core transaction. It is the engine of the system. The boats, the routes, the informal networks, they all exist because this price gap exists. The Sulu Sea smuggling economy does not begin with criminals or ideology. It begins with numbers that fail to align across borders. Once the incentive is clear, the next question is scale. How large is this trade, in real terms? According to Malaysian authorities, Marine Police seized the following last year alone: roughly 90,000 liters of petrol, nearly 1 million liters of diesel. The estimated value of these seizures was 88 million ringgit, or about 22 million US dollars. That number matters. But not for the reason it first appears. These figures do not represent the total trade. They represent what was intercepted. Seizures tell us 3 things. First, this is not small-time smuggling. Moving close to 1 million liters of diesel requires planning, storage, vessels, and coordination. This is organized activity, not opportunism. Second, the trade is persistent. Authorities speak of dozens of cases. These are patterns, not exceptions. And third, and most important, interceptions capture only a fraction of what is actually moving. In maritime smuggling, seizures are a lagging indicator. They show activity, not control. If this much fuel is being caught, far more is getting through. Quietly, routinely, profitably. The scale of the seizures does not prove enforcement is succeeding. It suggests the system has already become industrial. To understand why this trade continues, you have to look at the water itself. Sabah's eastern coast sits less than 120 kilometers from the southern islands of the Philippines. At its narrowest point, near the Semporna Island chain, the distance shrinks to just 18 kilometers. That is not a sea barrier. It is a short boat ride. The Sulu Sea is crowded with small islands, shallow channels, and narrow straits. Fishing routes have run through these waters for generations. For local fishermen, this is familiar ground. For enforcement agencies, it is a maze. Large patrol vessels struggle to operate here. Radar coverage breaks down. Small boats move easily, disappear quickly, and blend into legitimate traffic without effort. The geography naturally favors speed over surveillance. Local knowledge over state authority. Informality over regulation. In effect, the sea itself works against enforcement. The key point is this: the Sulu Sea is not difficult to police because states are weak. It is difficult to police because the geography is stronger. On a map, the maritime boundary between Malaysia and the Philippines looks clear. At sea, it rarely is. The Sulu Sea is a patchwork of overlapping patrol zones, unclear boundaries, and fragmented enforcement authority. Multiple agencies operate in the same waters, often with limited coordination and slow information sharing. This creates gaps. And smugglers understand those gaps far better than states do. Fuel can move from one jurisdiction to another in minutes. Legal responsibility follows much more slowly, tangled in paperwork and radio calls. Malaysian authorities have pointed to fuel storage sites on small islands near the maritime boundary. These locations sit in a regulatory gray area. Storage limits are unclear. Inspections are limited. Oversight is uneven. Once fuel is staged on these islands, monitoring becomes far more difficult. The result is a border that exists in law but fades in practice the farther you move from shore. At sea, sovereignty weakens with distance. Gray zone actors operate precisely in that space. What sets this case apart from routine smuggling is the level of official candor. Authorities are not guessing how this happens. They are describing it. Malaysia's Agriculture and Food Security Minister, Muhammad Sabu, has acknowledged that fishermen can legally purchase their full subsidized fuel quotas even when they do not need all of it. The unused fuel does not vanish. It is resold. Not stolen, not siphoned, but redirected into the black market. That distinction matters. It shows the core problem is not a failure of enforcement. It is a flaw in policy design. Sabah's Regional Marine Police Commander Ahmad Amri Abdul Rahman has echoed this point. He notes that enforcement is made harder by the dense spread of islands near international borders. Taken together, these statements reveal something important. The state understands how fuel exits the legal system. It knows where the fuel goes. And it understands why stopping the trade is so difficult. Yet the structure remains unchanged. This gray zone economy is not hidden. It operates in plain sight, inside loopholes that are openly acknowledged. Malaysia introduced fuel subsidies for fishermen in 2006. The goal was simple: protect livelihoods from rising fuel costs and keep coastal communities afloat. On paper, the policy worked. Fishermen gained reliable access to cheap diesel. Operating costs fell. Incomes became more predictable. But in the Sulu Sea, the subsidy did not stay national. It became portable value. Once fuel is subsidized at the point of purchase, it stops being just an input. It turns into a tradable asset. A liter of diesel bought legally in Sabah gains value the moment it enters a different pricing system. No law is broken at the point of sale. The distortion appears only after the fuel starts moving. This is how a welfare policy slides into a gray zone economy. Legal purchase. Informal transfer. Cross-border resale. All of it enabled by geography and uneven prices. Subsidies work inside borders. Markets do not respect them. Smuggling does not survive on supply alone. It survives because there is demand on the other side. In the southern Philippines, fuel prices are consistently higher than in Sabah. Diesel sells for around 50 pesos per liter, or roughly 85 US cents. For coastal communities and small operators, fuel is not optional. It powers fishing boats, small transport vessels, and generators in off-grid areas. But fuel distribution in the region is uneven. Infrastructure is weaker. Supply chains are longer. State presence fades as you move farther from major ports. Smuggled fuel fills that gap. It arrives by sea. It is sold locally. And it is often cheaper or simply more available than official supplies. This is the critical point. For many communities, the black market is not a luxury or a convenience. It is the most functional energy system available. Smuggled fuel persists not because demand is criminal, but because access is structural. When governments respond to smuggling, the instinct is almost always the same. Add more patrols, make more seizures, put more boats at sea. In the Sulu Sea, enforcement has not been absent. Fuel has been seized. Smuggling runs have been disrupted. Networks have been broken, at least temporarily. Yet the trade continues. That is because enforcement targets movement, not motivation. As long as fuel in Sabah remains subsidized, prices in the southern Philippines remain higher, and maritime borders remain porous, the incentive structure stays intact. Every seizure removes cargo. It does not remove the reason that cargo exists. In some cases, enforcement even raises profits. Higher risk makes successful runs more valuable. Without changes to subsidy design, quota controls, and regional coordination, patrols become repetitive and reactive. The key takeaway is simple. You can intercept boats. You cannot patrol away a price gap. What is happening in the Sulu Sea is not just smuggling. It is a functioning gray zone system. Gray zones exist between war and peace, legality and illegality, state control and state absence. They are low in visibility, non-ideological, economically rational, and politically deniable. Fuel smuggling in the Sulu Sea fits this pattern almost perfectly. No flags are raised. Borders are not openly challenged. There is no military escalation, and yet state authority is quietly worn down. The same routes used to move subsidized diesel can, and often do, support arms trafficking, narcotics flows, and human smuggling. Fuel is simply the most visible and least controversial cargo. That is what makes it dangerous. Gray zone economies normalize cross-border illegality without forcing states to respond forcefully. They persist because they stay below the threshold of crisis. The Sulu Sea is not unstable because of open conflict. It is unstable because informal systems are working better than formal ones. So, why does this keep happening, year after year, seizure after seizure? Because nothing at the core has changed. Fuel in Sabah remains subsidized. Fuel in the southern Philippines remains more expensive. And the Sulu Sea remains what it has always been: a maze of islands, short crossings, and weak coordination. This is not a failure of patrols. It is a mismatch between policy, geography, and regional integration. As long as price gaps move faster than regulation, gray zone actors will continue to profit. The lesson is straightforward. Smuggling in the Sulu Sea is not an anomaly. It is a rational response to structural conditions. Until subsidies are redesigned, borders are managed cooperatively, and peripheral regions are economically integrated, enforcement will remain reactive, and the gray zone will remain active. The Sulu Sea does not reward lawlessness. It rewards alignment with reality.
Now, the Philippines.
Philippines makes its first natural gas discovery in more than a decade. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. announced gas and condensate were found at a well near the existing Malampaya gas field off the coast of Palawan.
I am pleased to inform everyone that for the first time in over a decade, a significant natural gas discovery has been made. The discovered reservoir, called Malampaya East 1 or MAE-1, is located about 5 kilometers east of the existing Malampaya field.
The Philippines is running out of time and running short on energy. Demand keeps rising, electricity prices remain unstable, and dependence on imported fuel continues to grow. Yet beneath the waters off Palawan, the country may have found a lifeline that was hidden in plain sight. What if the answer to today's energy challenge has been there all along, just 5 kilometers offshore? Each year, the economy consumes more power than the last. Factories, data centers, growing cities, and millions of households all draw from a grid under increasing strain. Energy independence is no longer just a policy goal, it has become a strategic necessity tied directly to national strength and sovereignty.
This helps Malampaya's contribution and strengthens our domestic gas supply for many years to come. Initial testing showed that the well flowed at 60 million cubic feet per day. This indicates that the well has the potential to produce even more, confirming it is a high productivity resource comparable to the original Malampaya well.
On January 19, 2026, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. announced a discovery that could reshape the country's energy future. A major natural gas find at Malampaya East 1, or MAE-1. This was not a theory or a projection. The gas was already flowing, confirmed through testing beneath the seabed. MAE-1 sits just 5 kilometers east of the original Malampaya gas field. The same basin, the same geological system, but with new reserves. For more than 20 years, Malampaya powered up to 40% of Luzon's electricity before its natural decline began. As production fell, the clock started ticking. MAE-1 changes that timeline. This is the first major natural gas discovery in the Philippines in over a decade, arriving at a moment when global fuel markets are unstable, LNG imports are costly, and coal dependence remains high. Engineers confirmed a high-quality, commercially viable gas reservoir, supported by condensate output. This is energy security that can be measured, planned, and used. The scale matters. MAE-1 has the potential to power millions of Filipino homes, reduce brownouts, stabilize prices, and lower exposure to global shocks. Every unit of gas produced at home means fewer imports, fewer tankers, and fewer vulnerabilities. Energy independence is built one molecule at a time. What makes the discovery even more significant is who made it possible. Filipino engineers and crews carried out the work, completing operations without accidents. This was not just energy found in Philippine waters, it was built through Philippine capability. Across Southeast Asia, countries are racing to secure gas supplies as the energy transition tightens markets. With MAE-1, the Philippines re-enters that race not as a buyer, but as a producer. The next decade will determine how affordable power remains, how competitive industries stay, and how stable the grid becomes. MAE-1 arrives just as that decisive window opens. 5 kilometers east of an aging giant, a new chapter has begun. This is not just an energy story, it is an economic story, a security story, and a sovereignty story, and it starts offshore. Off the western edge of the Philippines, beyond the well-known tourist coasts of Palawan, lies one of the country's most important energy assets. Hidden beneath the sea, the Malampaya gas field quietly powered the nation for years. It was never visible and rarely discussed, yet it played a central role in keeping the country running. Not on land, not in sight, but essential. Discovered in the 1990s and developed in the early 2000s, Malampaya became the Philippines' first and only large-scale domestic source of natural gas. For more than 20 years, gas flowed from the seabed through underwater pipelines to power plants in Luzon. This was energy produced within Philippine waters, supporting homes, businesses, and industries without relying on overseas fuel. At its peak, Malampaya supplied up to 40% of Luzon's electricity. Entire cities depended on it, factories operated, hospitals stayed powered, and homes remained lit because of one offshore field. When Luzon had stable electricity, Malampaya was often the reason. But gas fields naturally decline. After more than 2 decades of steady production, Malampaya began to slow as pressure dropped and output fell. The impact was felt across the power system, revealing how much the country depended on a single source. This raised a difficult question for policymakers. What comes after Malampaya? The wider energy picture made that question even more urgent. The Philippines remains one of Southeast Asia's most coal-dependent countries, relying heavily on imported fuel. This exposes the country to global price swings and supply disruptions, driving up electricity costs even when demand does not change. Each shipment of imported coal adds risk. Natural gas offers a practical alternative. It burns cleaner than coal, produces fewer pollutants, and helps balance the grid when renewable energy fluctuates. As Malampaya declined, LNG imports filled part of the gap, preventing shortages but increasing exposure to global markets. Imported gas can help in the short term, but it cannot deliver real energy independence. That is why attention returned to the waters off Palawan. Beneath the same seabed that once sustained Malampaya, new potential remained. This time, the need was clearer, the risks were higher, and the timing was critical. Just 5 kilometers east of the original Malampaya gas field sits Malampaya East 1, or MAE-1. It lies in the same offshore basin and geological system that powered the Philippines for decades, but it is a new reservoir with fresh potential. This discovery was not a stroke of luck. It was the result of careful study, experience, and a deliberate decision to return to ground that was already well understood. Early estimates show that MAE-1 holds about 98 billion cubic feet of natural gas, enough to generate roughly 14 billion kilowatt hours of electricity each year. That amount of power could supply around 5.7 million homes for a full year. These figures translate into real impact, millions of households supported, and a meaningful boost to the national power supply from a single offshore well. The technical achievement behind MAE-1 is just as significant. The well was drilled in deep water off Palawan, under demanding conditions that required precision, strong safety standards, and experienced teams. Flow tests confirmed its strength, with initial output of around 60 million cubic feet of gas per day, showing that this is a solid, commercially viable discovery. The presence of condensate further improves the project's value and resilience. Strategically, MAE-1 arrives at the right time. As the original Malampaya field continues to decline, this new discovery helps extend domestic gas production, stabilizes supply, and reduces dependence on imports. It also offers environmental benefits, emitting fewer pollutants than coal while supporting reliable power generation. More than just a new well, MAE-1 represents continuity and choice, a reminder that the Philippines still has room to shape its own energy future. Energy security is not an abstract concept. It shows up in everyday life, on electricity bills, in factories that need steady power, and in hospitals where outages are not an option. Gas from MAE-1 helps stabilize gas-fired power plants, keeping electricity supply steady when demand rises. When fuel supply is reliable, power generation follows. That stability matters. In a world shaped by geopolitical tension and volatile fuel markets, predictability becomes a real advantage. Domestic gas shields the Philippines from sudden global price shocks and reduces the need for costly emergency imports. While MAE-1 does not eliminate risk, it shifts the balance in the country's favor by giving planners more control and flexibility. The economic impact extends beyond energy security. Projects like MAE-1 support jobs across a wide chain, from offshore drilling and marine transport to engineering, maintenance, ports, and logistics. These are not short-term opportunities. They create lasting skills, support local businesses, and strengthen industrial capacity. Revenue from domestic gas also stays within the country, flowing back through taxes, royalties, infrastructure spending, and reinvestment instead of being lost to imports. Reliable energy also delivers clear social benefits. Households experience fewer outages and more predictable power costs. Businesses gain the confidence to invest, expand, and retain jobs. Stable supply makes it easier to extend electricity to underserved and rural areas, supporting schools, clinics, and small enterprises. At its core, development still begins with access to dependable power. From an environmental standpoint, natural gas offers a practical step forward. It produces significantly less carbon dioxide than coal and helps lower emissions immediately, not just on paper. Gas also plays a key supporting role alongside renewables, stabilizing the grid when solar and wind output fluctuate. This balance allows cleaner energy to grow without undermining reliability. Finally, responsible extraction underpins the entire transition. The MAE-1 drilling campaign was completed without accidents, reflecting strong safety standards in a high-risk offshore environment. Strict environmental safeguards and monitoring were applied throughout the process, protecting sensitive ecosystems and ensuring long-term viability. In energy development, cutting corners rarely saves time or money. It almost always costs more in the end.
The next steps are the completion and testing of the Camago 3, followed by the drilling of the Pag-asa exploration well to pursue more potential gas resources.
Government and industry reaction to the MAE-1 discovery has been clear and aligned. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. described the find as a high-productivity resource, highlighting both the technical success of the well and the fact that it was carried out under Filipino leadership without any accidents. Within the energy sector, momentum has followed quickly. Companies involved in the Malampaya project, including Prime Energy Resources Development, PNOC Exploration Corporation, and Prime Oil and Gas Inc., are preparing for expanded work under the Malampaya Phase 4 program. Follow-on wells and appraisal activities are intended to fully define the resource and move it efficiently into existing infrastructure. At the policy level, MAE-1 is likely to influence how the country plans its energy future. Stronger incentives for exploration, clearer gas market rules, and better coordination between fossil fuels and renewables are all back on the table. The discovery sends a clear signal. When success appears, policy adapts. MAE-1 demonstrates that the Philippines can still find energy, develop it responsibly, and use it strategically, reclaiming not just supply, but control over its own energy choices. Offshore energy development is never simple. Deepwater drilling pushes engineering to its limits, where extreme pressure, temperature, and depth leave little room for error. MAE-1 lies thousands of meters below the surface, in an environment where precision determines success and mistakes carry heavy consequences. The ocean does not compromise, and energy security depends on how well projects are executed, not on optimism alone. Every offshore well brings technical risk. Narrow drilling margins, high-pressure reservoirs, and complex subsea systems mean that a single misstep can delay timelines or erase hard-won gains. Deepwater projects are also expensive. Rigs, support vessels, and safety systems demand large investments, and delays quickly multiply costs. Discovering gas is only the first step. Developing it responsibly is the real challenge. Market forces add another layer of uncertainty. Global natural gas prices shift constantly, shaped by geopolitics, weather patterns, and competing demand from major markets. When prices fall too low, domestic projects struggle to remain viable. When prices rise too high, consumers bear the burden. Managing this balance between affordability and long-term supply is one of the hardest tests for energy planners. Infrastructure is equally critical. Gas must move efficiently from offshore wells to onshore facilities and into the power grid. Pipelines, processing plants, and grid readiness will determine how quickly MAE-1 becomes usable energy. Gas left underground has no value without a clear path to the grid. Environmental and regulatory risks cannot be ignored. The waters off Palawan are ecologically sensitive, requiring strict safeguards, continuous monitoring, and firm regulatory oversight. Permits, environmental assessments, and community engagement are not box-ticking exercises. They determine public trust and long-term viability. Sustainable energy development depends on getting these right every time, because speed without stewardship ultimately leads to failure. Malampaya East 1 is not the end of the story. It is the beginning. Development is expected to move forward in phases under the Malampaya Phase 4 drilling program, allowing progress to be measured, adjusted, and managed carefully. Energy transitions take time, and MAE-1 represents the first step in a longer journey, not a quick fix. Additional wells, including Camago 3 and Bagong Pagasa, are planned to confirm and expand the resource base. Each successful well reduces uncertainty and strengthens confidence in the field's long-term potential. As testing continues, timelines for tying new production into existing infrastructure become clearer. Phased development allows flexibility, helping limit risk while ensuring steady progress. Success at MAE-1 also changes how the broader Malampaya area is viewed. Geological confidence increases, and prospects once considered marginal are being reassessed. The basin is no longer seen as one in decline, but as one with renewed potential. One proven discovery can reshape how an entire block is evaluated. In the long term, MAE-1 fits into a broader energy strategy rather than competing with it. The goal is not to choose gas over renewables, but to sequence them properly. Domestic gas provides stability, while solar, wind, and energy storage continue to scale, supporting a cleaner grid without sudden disruptions or price shocks. By smoothing volatility and strengthening supply control, MAE-1 gives the Philippines greater leverage in planning its energy future. It brings more certainty, more resilience, and a shift from reactive decisions to proactive strategy. In a region competing fiercely for fuel and investment, the country gains something rare: time. Time to plan, time to invest, and time to transition on its own terms. MAE-1 may not solve every challenge, but it clearly changes the direction, replacing decline with balance and dependence with choice. The discovery at Malampaya East 1 marks a defining moment in the Philippines' energy story, unlocking new domestic resources that can reinforce energy security, underpin economic expansion, and support a more realistic transition toward cleaner power generation. While technical, market, and environmental challenges remain, the find highlights the value of coherent policy direction, close coordination between government and industry, and disciplined, responsible resource development. As the country looks ahead, the true measure of this discovery will lie in how effectively it is managed, ensuring that energy development proceeds with environmental care and delivers broad, equitable benefits to Filipino households, communities, and the national economy. If you found this analysis valuable, share your perspective in the comments. Your insights help deepen the conversation and sharpen our understanding of evolving regional dynamics. Thank you, and we will see you soon in our next geopolitical discussion.
The Philippines.
The Philippine economy. The Philippines.
The Philippines. The Philippines.
The Philippines.
The Philippines recorded a 5.5% economic growth in the second quarter of 2025, one of the fastest in Asia.
While many countries are still playing catch-up in a shaky global economy, the Philippines just pulled off something remarkable. In the second quarter of 2025, the country posted a solid 5.5% GDP growth year-on-year, beating expectations and outpacing economic giants like China, 4.8%, and Indonesia, 5.1%. Only Vietnam, with its 8% sprint, managed to stay ahead. But make no mistake, this is a huge win for the Philippines, and the world is watching. What's even more impressive? This isn't just a lucky spike. The growth is powered by real momentum, and it's coming from the heart of the Filipino economy: agriculture, infrastructure, and domestic demand. After a tough El Niño season and global food price surges, our farmers are bouncing back. Agriculture posted a strong 3.4% growth this quarter, and that's not just a number. That's food on the table, income in the provinces, and jobs for thousands. At the same time, domestic demand is surging. More Filipinos are spending confidently again, in malls, in local travel, in groceries, and it's showing in the numbers. OFW remittances continue to flow steadily, boosting household incomes. Add to that the rise in employment, especially in services and construction, and you've got a nation that's not just recovering, it's thriving from the inside out. And let's not forget infrastructure. The government's Build Better More program is in full swing, fueling growth beyond Metro Manila. Roads, airports, railways, they're not just creating short-term jobs, but connecting regions and supercharging local economies. Every bridge built is a link to opportunity, and that's exactly what we're seeing in provinces that are finally getting the spotlight they deserve.
This performance isn't going unnoticed. In fact, when you look at the latest rankings of Asia's top-performing economies for second quarter of 2025, the Philippines stands proudly near the top. Leading the pack is Vietnam with a stunning 8.0% growth, but right behind is the Philippines at 5.5%. Surpassing regional heavyweights like Indonesia, 5.1%, China, 4.8%, and Thailand, 3.9%. This isn't just a number on a chart. It's a clear signal that the Philippines is stepping up as one of the fastest-growing economies in emerging Asia, showing the world that it's ready to lead, not just follow. For Filipino viewers in the U.S. and around the world, this is your reminder that the homeland is on the rise. It's more than just numbers, it's proof of resilience, determination, and smart policy decisions. Economists are now saying that the government's full-year GDP growth target of 5.5% to 6.5% is not only possible, it's well within reach. Even more good news? Inflation has slowed to about 3.2%, and the peso is holding steady. With the holiday season fast approaching, a time when spending traditionally spikes, third and fourth quarter are looking like a runway for even more economic liftoff. So, what does this mean for you, the everyday Filipino? It means more jobs, more business opportunities, stronger consumer confidence, and hopefully better days ahead. Whether you're running a sari-sari store, working abroad, managing a startup, or just hoping for stability, this growth touches all of us. Let's celebrate this win, but also stay hungry. The world is changing fast, and the Philippines is proving that it can not only keep up, but lead. So next time someone asks how the country's doing, smile and say, "We just grew 5.5%, and we're just getting started."
So what exactly is fueling this economic momentum? The answer lies in a powerful mix of resilient local demand and a recharged export and agricultural sector. A formula that's proving to be the perfect growth engine for the Philippines in 2025. Let's start with agriculture, and what a comeback it's having. The agriculture, forestry, and fishing sector surged by 7% in second quarter, a massive turnaround from last year's contraction. This isn't just about better weather, though that certainly helped. It's also the result of smarter, targeted government investments. Improved cold storage facilities, crop productivity programs, and direct support for farmers. The result? Strong harvests in key crops like rice and corn, and renewed life in rural economies that had been hit hard in recent years. Next up, the Filipino consumer. Household consumption, which makes up the backbone of our economy, grew by 5.5%, powered by one thing every Filipino feels right away: lower inflation. In fact, inflation dropped to just 0.9% in July 2025, the lowest it's been in 5 years. Combine that with steady remittances from our hardworking OFWs, and what do you get? More spending power, more family support, and more confidence in the economy. Even the price of rice, often the biggest concern at the Palenque, has eased, a big relief for Filipino households. And let's not forget the government's role in keeping this momentum going. Public spending has been nothing short of aggressive and effective. Public administration and defense grew by a whopping 12.8% as the government poured funds into education, healthcare, social protection, and essential services. It's a clear sign that beyond infrastructure, the administration is investing in people, and it's working. Altogether, these key drivers are not just lifting GDP numbers, they're improving lives, boosting confidence, and laying the groundwork for long-term inclusive growth. The Philippines isn't just growing, it's growing smart.
When it comes to monetary policy, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, BSP, is striking the right balance, staying flexible, data-driven, and responsive to the needs of the economy. One of the biggest wins this quarter? Inflation is finally under control. In July 2025, headline inflation eased to just 0.9%, the lowest level the country has seen since October 2019. This sharp drop wasn't by accident. It came from slower price increases in essential areas like housing, water, and electricity, along with a significant decline in transportation costs. For everyday Filipinos, that means more breathing room in their budgets, and for the economy, it means more fuel for growth. With inflation cooling down, the BSP now has room to maneuver. Governor Eli Remolona recently hinted that we could see 2 possible interest rate cuts before the year ends. That's big news. Lower interest rates would make it easier for businesses to borrow, expand, and hire, and give consumers more incentive to spend and invest. In short, the central bank is playing a supportive role in keeping this momentum going, carefully watching the data and ready to step in when needed to sustain and stabilize growth.
Infrastructure continues to be the backbone of the Philippines' long-term growth strategy, and the government isn't slowing down anytime soon. Under the flagship Build, Better, More program, several game-changing mega-projects are making serious headway, with the clear goal of transforming how Filipinos live, work, and travel. Leading the charge is the Metro Manila Subway Project, a historic 488 billion pesos, $8.65 billion, venture that's set to become the country's first underground railway. With 17 stations running across 33 kilometers, it's expected to serve 370,000 passengers daily, bringing massive relief to Metro Manila's choking traffic and commuting woes. For a city long haunted by congestion, this is a long-awaited lifeline. Then, there's the new Manila International Airport in Bulacan, a 735 billion pesos, $13 billion project that's set to redefine the country's aviation landscape. Designed to accommodate at least 100 million passengers every year, this airport is poised to take over as the country's main international gateway, easing congestion at NAIA and opening doors for global travel and trade. Another major undertaking is the North-South Commuter Railway, NSCR, a 147-kilometer line connecting New Clark City in the north to Calamba, Laguna in the south. Funded in part by the Asian Development Bank, this project isn't just about transport. It's a regional integration strategy that will help decongest Metro Manila while stimulating growth in surrounding provinces. And the pipeline keeps expanding. Just recently, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. ordered red carpet treatment for the Sangley Point International Airport project in Cavite, pushing for faster development. On top of that, the rehabilitation and construction of 7 new EDSA busway stations has been announced, further proving that the country is all in on improving its urban mobility and public transport systems.
From subways to super airports, these infrastructure investments aren't just about building roads, they're about building the future. With each project, the Philippines is laying down the groundwork for stronger connectivity, more jobs, and a more competitive economy that's ready for global attention. Despite global economic headwinds, the Philippine economy is proving its strength on the international stage, especially when it comes to trade. In June 2025, merchandise exports surged by a remarkable 26.1%, marking the second highest growth in the last 2 years. This impressive boost was fueled by strong global demand for key Philippine exports, especially electronic products, mineral goods, machinery, and transport equipment. It's a clear sign that Filipino businesses are adapting quickly, responding to international market needs with quality and competitiveness. And behind the scenes, the government's aggressive trade promotion efforts are clearly paying off. But it's not just about what we're selling, it's also about what we're bringing in. Imports rose by 10.8% in the same month, led by a rise in transport equipment and capital goods. This kind of growth isn't a red flag, it actually reflects a healthy, expanding economy. Increased imports of raw materials and machinery mean industries are investing, building, and preparing for more growth. It's a balanced trade picture, where both exports and imports are rising, a sign of confidence, capacity, and momentum in the Philippine economy. As we look ahead, one thing is clear. The Philippines is not just surviving, it's thriving. From a booming agricultural sector and surging consumer confidence to massive infrastructure projects and record-breaking exports, the country is building a foundation for sustained, inclusive growth. In a world full of uncertainty, the resilience and energy of the Filipino economy are standing out and standing tall. For every Filipino at home and abroad, this momentum is something to be proud of. The world is watching and the Philippines is ready to lead. If you liked the video, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe our channel for deep analysis of contemporary issues.
The Philippines is positioning itself as a key link in global supply chains with a proposed high-tech industrial hub in Luzon under a new plan with the United States.
A factory floor in the Netherlands. It looks like something out of a science fiction film. Clean rooms the size of football fields. Workers in full bodysuits. Machines the size of small houses that took decades and billions of dollars to build, doing something no other machine on Earth can do. Printing circuits onto silicon at a scale smaller than a virus. This is ASML, the Dutch company that manufactures extreme ultraviolet lithography machines. The only machines in the world capable of making the most advanced semiconductor chips. ASML makes roughly 50 of these machines per year. Every cutting-edge chip in your phone, your laptop, every AI data center in the world, it ran through a machine made in Veldhoven, the Netherlands. There is exactly one company in the world that can build them. China has been trying to get its hands on these machines for over a decade. Washington has been preventing that transfer for nearly as long. And in December 2025, the United States formalized what had been a loose network of export controls and bilateral agreements into something far more deliberate, far more ambitious, and far more consequential. They named it Pax Silica. On April 17, 2026, the Philippines just signed on. Welcome to the Indo-Pacific Report. What you're about to hear is not just a trade story. This is the architecture of the next world order. And Luzon just became its first construction site. To understand what happened in Manila, you need to go back about 35 years. Around 1990, Deng Xiaoping, the architect of China's modern economy, reportedly made an observation that the Chinese state has quietly built its entire resource strategy around ever since. The quote, often attributed to him, goes something like this: "The Middle East has oil. China has rare earths." He was right. China today controls approximately 60% of the world's rare earth production, and over 85% of its processing capacity. These are the elements, neodymium, terbium, dysprosium, that go into electric motors, wind turbines, military guidance systems, and semiconductor manufacturing equipment. You cannot build a chip fab without them. You cannot build an advanced military without them. For 30 years, the global technology industry looked at this concentration and shrugged. Efficiency was the principle. China was cheap, fast, and integrated. Why duplicate what already existed? Then COVID happened. Semiconductor shortages shut down car factories in Michigan and electronics assembly in Taiwan. Supply chains that had been optimized for calm weather shattered in the first real storm. And Washington finally started asking, what happens if this disruption is not an accident, but a choice? Jacob Hellberg, the U.S. Undersecretary of State for Economic Affairs and the chief architect of Pax Silica, put it plainly. If the 20th century ran on oil and steel, the 21st century runs on compute and the minerals that feed it. Whoever controls the semiconductor supply chain, the minerals, the manufacturing equipment, the chip design, the fabrication, the packaging, controls the foundational infrastructure of artificial intelligence. And whoever controls AI controls the economy, the military, and the political leverage of the next 50 years. This is the world Pax Silica was built to shape. This is the question worth sitting with. Why the Philippines? The standard answer is geography. Luzon sits at the northern end of the Philippine archipelago, directly astride the shipping lanes connecting Northeast Asian manufacturing hubs, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, with the Indian Ocean and the global market. It is geographically central to the Indo-Pacific in a way that very few locations are. But geography alone doesn't explain this. The more precise answer is that the Philippines has a long, underappreciated history in the global electronics supply chain. The country is already a significant producer of semiconductors and electronics. Manila and its surrounding regions have hosted electronics assembly and packaging operations for decades. The workforce is young. The Philippines has one of the youngest median ages in Southeast Asia, technically capable and English-speaking. Labor costs remain competitive relative to